This week's episode of Let's Talk About Mental Health is Let's Talk About Self-Talk, why the voice in your head has so much control, and how to make it work for your best interests. So, let's get talking. This is Let's Talk About Mental Health, a weekly podcast about mental health and well-being, hosted by Jeremy Godwin. Let's talk about mental health, because the more we talk about it, the easier it gets. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of Let's Talk About Mental Health, the podcast that's all about practical advice to improve your mental health and well-being. I'm Jeremy Godwin, and I'm very glad that you could join me once again for this episode, which you can either listen to as a podcast or read on letstalkaboutmentalhealth.com.au. This week, we're going to be talking about self-talk. What it is, how to stop it from making you feel bad about yourself, and how to improve it. Enough of the introductions, let's get talking. Self-talk. Most of us have that little voice in our head that provides running commentary on everything that we think, feel, and do. But the question is that voice your best friend or your worst enemy? And what do you do when that little voice in your head sounds like it just might have rabies? This week, we're going to be digging into self-talk, what it is, why it matters, and how to work through the things that you think and feel so that you can be more positive and self-confident. Let's start, as always, by taking a moment to define the topic of the week. So what is self-talk? Self-talk is a term used to describe the inner voice in your head, which is part of your consciousness. It's the way that we process our thoughts, feelings, and experiences. And self-talk can either be positive or negative, or a combination of both. Positive self-talk is when we have thoughts about ourselves that are supportive, complimentary, and nurturing. Negative self-talk, on the other hand, can be destructive, derogatory, and criticizing. There's a big difference between the two, and it's usually pretty easy to identify if it's positive or negative. For example, positive self-talk might be thinking, wow, I'm looking good today, when you're wearing your favorite outfit, compared to making a mistake and thinking something negative, like, why did you do that? Are you stupid? Most people have a combination of positive and negative thoughts about themselves. And negative thoughts aren't necessarily bad, because they can serve to be a motivator to do and be better. But the challenge becomes when the negative thoughts outweigh the positive. When you're feeling stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, depressed, or struggling with low self-esteem, it can sometimes be a real challenge to push away negative thoughts. And often, negative self-talk goes hand in hand with conditions like anxiety and depression. Before we go any further, let's talk about what we're not discussing this week. I mentioned before that self-talk can go hand in hand with anxiety and depression, and it can be very closely connected with overthinking and stress. I've covered both of those topics in detail in previous episodes, so I won't be spending any time digging into overthinking and stress. If you're prone to either of those or both, then I do encourage you to listen to those episodes on your preferred podcast platform, or you can find them on the website, along with written versions of the episodes. Just look under the episodes tab at letstalkaboutmentalhealth.com.au, and I'll include the link as well in this week's transcript. Some examples of negative self-talk might be, I can't believe I just did that, or why can't I get this right, or why am I so fat, or why am I so useless, or nobody will ever love me, or my personal favourite, who would want to listen to anything that I have to say? It's not like I haven't had that thought before. On the other hand, some examples of positive self-talk might be, that's a good opportunity to learn, or I'm getting better at this every day, or look, I'm getting healthier every day, or I am useful and valuable, or I am loved and I am capable of being loved. Or, talking about my personal favourite that I mentioned just before, it might be thinking something like, I have something useful to share with the world. I know it sounds like I'm really sharing my psyche there. Anyway, how you think about yourself and how you treat yourself is the foundation of your mental health and well-being. If you treat yourself like crap, you're going to feel like crap. Just like if you treat yourself like a Disney princess, then you'll be a Disney princess, in theory anyway. Let me say that this subject around self-talk might not necessarily apply to everyone. Some of you may have really healthy inner dialogues, and good on you. Keep it up. You're number one. For some of us, though, we have an inner voice that sounds way more like those two grumpy old dudes on the Muppets, you know, the ones who sat there reading the show for filth every episode. When you think poorly of yourself, it's tough not to believe it, because you know that nobody in the world knows you like you know you. You know? I couldn't help myself. Seriously, our inner voice can be a devious little bugger sometimes. And even though we might want to expect that we would have our own best interests in mind at all times, unfortunately, our inner critic can sometimes take over and run amok with our fears, vulnerabilities, and insecurities. Working on your self-talk is a much bigger challenge than simply deciding one day to be nice to yourself. If you're prone to negative self-talk, it's going to take a while to undo years and years of reinforced behavior. Just telling yourself you're doing well isn't going to immediately change things, but with time and patience and practice, you can and you will turn that obnoxious little voice into a supportive one. One of the challenges of living with anxiety or depression or any condition like that is the spiral that can happen inside your head when that little voice decides to tell you that you're a worthless piece of crap. I know from personal experience. In the first 2 years or so of my depression and anxiety, so we're talking about late 2011 all the way through to early 2014, over that period when things were at their absolute worst, that voice in my head had an absolute field day. Everything that I didn't like about myself was amplified. Every mistake I had ever made came back with a vengeance and apparently needed to be examined in micro detail at 3 a.m. I told myself I was worthless, lazy, unworthy of love, a horrible person who deserved every bad thing that came my way because karma had caught up with me for all the times that I'd been mean or impatient or, the people at work that I'd ever had to discipline for not doing the right thing in terms of what the company had expected of them, all of that stuff. And of course, with hindsight comes the realization now that not all of those things are true. I mean, I'm not going to paint myself as a saint here because I'm not. And we all have so-called bad qualities just as much as we have so-called good qualities. It's part of the human experience. Nobody is perfect. But I'm certainly not the monster that my mind made me out to be. I know now that so much of that stuff, the vulnerabilities, the insecurities, the fears, it was all due to the stuff in my past that I had never actually dealt with, like my father rejecting me and my mother being both physically and emotionally abusive. Everyone's experience is different, but one thing that those of us who have experienced trauma in our childhoods tend to have in common is that it can have a huge negative impact on us in adulthood until we eventually confront it and deal with it. Part of that impact is the way that we talk to ourselves or the way that we think about ourselves. So let's talk about why negative self-talk happens. First of all, your inner dialogue has been shaped by every thought and feeling that you have ever had, right back to the day that you were born. It's the product of everything that you've ever done, said, or felt. So, if you had a rough childhood, then it's pretty likely that you're going to have some thought patterns that might be on the negative side, unless you deal with them. If you were constantly told that you were stupid, even though you were the top of the class, or if your father suddenly stopped calling or visiting one day because he had a new family, you're probably going to feel some type of way about that. And if it's left to fester, then over time, it will bury itself deep down into your subconscious, and it will start to inform every thought and feeling that you have about yourself, every emotion. Let's talk about emotions for a moment. Your emotions are the stuff that's bubbling away just below the surface. Sometimes they come out, and sometimes you keep them hidden. Either way, they drive the things that you do and say. Your emotions are in turn driven by your thoughts and feelings. That's the stuff that's going on a little bit deeper under the surface. And they in turn are a product of your values and your beliefs. But it doesn't stop there because your values and beliefs are fundamentally driven by your needs. And more specifically, whether your needs are being met or if they're going unmet. There's a whole theory in psychology that was put forward by Abraham Maslow, and it's referred to as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, I won't go into massive detail. Feel free to look it up if you're really into this stuff like I am. In short, it suggests that our needs start from a basic level. So we're talking about breathing, sleeping, eating, and security. And then from there, once those needs are met, they progress into love and belonging, then into esteem, and then into self-actualization. My point here is that the theory states everything about you is being driven by those needs and whether they're being met or not. So if your more fundamental needs are threatened, let's say if you're feeling that your safety is threatened, or more commonly, if you're feeling rejected and so don't have your love and belonging needs being met, you're going to think, feel, and act in a very different manner than you would if all of your needs were being met. That's what is driving your self-talk. All that stuff that's going on in your mind now is being directly influenced by what's happening or not happening in your life at this moment, as well as everything from your past, whether good, bad, or indifferent. Why does that voice have so much control? Well, the reason why is because we let it. We give it power. And we give it power because of our deep-seated insecurities, vulnerabilities, and fears. Fear of failure? Sure, I'll beat myself up over that and second guess every decision that I make and keep myself small for fear of trying something new in case it all goes to shit. That's just one example, but hopefully you get my point. That voice is trying to protect you in its own small-minded way because it's trying to keep you out of harm's way. Having said that, it's also trying to keep you from trying new things so that you stay safe and cozy in your little box. We all have fears and insecurities. Some of us are good naturally at pushing through them. Some of us have learned that skill over time, whereas some of us struggle to face those fears, let alone push past them. It's human nature, and it happens to many of us. But when that negative voice takes over, especially common for those of us with mental health challenges, then that constant self-criticism can become debilitating. Unless you're Laura Branigan, and this is a random 80s song reference, because apparently the voices in her head were just saying Gloria over and over again, so not quite sure what was going on there. But for the rest of us, you know what I'm talking about. And for anybody that knows that song, trust me when I say you're going to be walking around for the rest of the day singing Gloria. I guarantee it. That is my gift to you. Enjoy. Self-criticism happens when we focus on the negative rather than looking for solutions or acknowledging the positive. If you choose to only focus on the negative, then that's all that you will see. So it's up to you to challenge it. I know it's frustrating when you hear things from people like me talking about your mental health and saying things like, it's up to you to challenge it. But the reality is that nobody can get inside your head and rearrange things for you. Only you can do that. You can seek guidance and support, like listening to a podcast like this and working through the actions that I give you, or going to see a counselor or therapist and digging deep through things, especially past and present trauma, but only you can manage the stuff in your head. If your little voice tells you that you're worthless, thank it for its opinion and then remind yourself that it's just your insecurities, vulnerabilities, and fears trying to protect you, even though it's going a really shitty way about it. It's like when someone feels it necessary to share their opinion with you when it's actually a criticism or an insult disguised as an opinion. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but you're entitled to choose whether or not to let their opinion take up valuable real estate in your head. It's no different when we're talking about your inner dialogue. The same goes for that inner voice. Just because the call is coming from inside the house, it doesn't mean that the little voice is in any real position of power. It just means that there's a little voice inside your head who might be a little bit of an asshole, and you can choose whether to hang up the phone or keep letting it taunt you. So, how do you work through your self-talk and make it work for you and your best interests? The first step is to tackle any negative self-talk immediately when it happens. Notice the thought, acknowledge it, and process why you're having it. For example, I'm feeling insecure because I'm trying something new and it's okay to be a little bit scared. I am not going to let fear hold me back. So process why you're having that thought and then let it go. If the self-criticism is about something that you can change and want to change, then change it. If it's about something that's outside of your control, like how another person thinks about you, let it go because you can't change that. You can influence it, for example, by behaving differently in the future, but you can't change it because you cannot change another person. Fact. End of sentence. One thing I will just quickly say here is that if that inner voice is being critical of you because you are making choices that are not in your best interests, you might want to listen. And that's probably the only time where I think personally that giving into the negative self-talk actually is in your best interest, because although it may be making you feel bad about the choices that you're making, it is highlighting the fact that you are making bad choices. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. All right. Anyway, another approach is to talk to someone that you trust. As I always say, sometimes a good talk is exactly what you need to get things off your chest so that you can then move forward. I'm a big one for venting. I need to vent my feelings, and then once I've run out of steam, then I'm able to look at the situation rationally and find a way forward. Another thing that can help, and is also recommended by some professionals, is to name that negative inner voice. Choose something that works for you. Personally, I like to use something that's slightly absurd, like Gertrude. No, for real. Apologies if your name is Gertrude. But you might go with something like negative Nora, or negatina, or horrid Henrietta, or whatever works for you. If it's happening a lot, talk to a professional. I've said it 1,000 times before in my podcast, and I'll say it another 1,000 times before this year is out. You don't need to work through this stuff on your own, and nor should you when it's really serious as well. When you talk to a professional, be it a counselor or a therapist or whoever feels right for you, they can do deeper work with you to process what's going on. And a good qualified therapist or psychologist can use techniques that help you to deal with trauma if need be. For example, there's a technique called cognitive reframing, which when I was going through therapy at the height of my issues with depression and anxiety, I was really struggling to get past a lot of stuff from my childhood and kind of like stuck in it and felt a bit broken. And so the therapist that I worked with used cognitive reframing techniques to actually help me to work through, confront that, and actually reprocess the emotions around it. And now I'm able to actually talk about it and revisit that memory without experiencing the extreme negative emotions that were attached with it. There are still emotions attached to it. I'm not completely removed from it, don't get me wrong, but the emotions now are more about being able to accept that it's part of my past and that I'm safe now. So I share that with you because if you are dealing with really, really deep-seated stuff that is making it difficult and has a direct impact on your self-talk, then it is important to work with a qualified professional because it is possible to actually work through that really awful stuff, process it in a healthy manner, and actually reframe it so that you can get on with a healthy existence. I digress. Another thing that you can do is to focus on doing what you can to prevent getting to a place of negative self-talk taking over. Some of the things that you can do are to get out more. The more you stay at home isolated away from people, the more your brain is probably going to be taking over and telling you things that aren't so great about yourself. Do not isolate yourself, get out more. Focus on actively letting go of the little stuff so that it doesn't become big stuff. Be conscious of what you put into your mind and what you put out into the world, because what you put out will come straight back to you. Don't go making nasty comments at people on the internet or being rude to shop assistants or servers and then wonder why negative energy comes right back at you. Put out the type of energy that you want back. Cultivate more positive self-talk. Now, I'm not saying that you have to stand in the mirror and compliment yourself for 10 or 15 minutes every day, but if that works for you, go for gold. You could simply do things such as taking a moment to congratulate yourself on a job well done when you complete a task. You could undertake daily gratitude practice and write a list of 5 to 10 things that you're grateful for every single day. You could spend a few minutes every week and write down a list of things that you like about yourself. It doesn't have to be over the top, but it is about acknowledging and cultivating that positive self-talk. You are a decent person, you are a good person, and you are worthy. Another thing that you can do for self-talk is healthy food and exercise. Yep, I say it all the time, but here we are again. What you put into your body, mind, and spirit will have a direct effect on how you think and feel. Make healthy decisions. Do not self-medicate with alcohol or drugs or food or whatever. They are doing much more harm than good. Alcohol is a depressant. So if you are prone to drinking your way through self-talk, think about how you feel the morning after or the afternoon after, and you'll know exactly what I mean. And if you do slip up, that's okay. Forgive yourself, learn from it, and resolve to do better next time. On that note, choose healthy thoughts. If you're prone to negative self-talk, make a conscious decision every single day to think positive thoughts. When the inevitable negative thoughts happen, simply observe them, acknowledge them, thank them for trying to protect you, and tell them that you're going to focus on the positive now, because that's how you want to live. It will take time, it'll take perseverance and lots of practice, but eventually you will see that the negative thoughts will happen less frequently. You need to be vigilant, however. Don't stop your deliberate focus on positive thoughts and positive self-talk just because things are improving a little bit. Because if you take your eyes off the negative self-talk, it might decide to run around like a bull in a china shop again. So, keep focused every day. Overall, it's about cultivating healthy processing habits. So be aware of habits that might be affecting your self-talk. Like I said before, don't isolate yourself, don't stay inside watching TV or playing video games every day. Also, don't avoid dealing with problems when they happen. And most importantly, make time for self-care. Self-care is a topic that I covered in episode 6. If you haven't heard or read that, please, I'll put the link on the website in the transcript as well, or just jump over onto your preferred platform and have a listen. Some of the other things are around being conscious of where you spend your time. Don't spend too much time in negative situations or around negative people. And also, most importantly, don't pretend that the negative running commentary in your head isn't doing you harm, because it actually is chipping away at your self-esteem every minute of every day. So if you are having that negative voice constantly yapping in your head, it is important to do something about it. So when it comes to self-talk and mental health and well-being, here are a few tips that I'd like to leave you with as I head towards the end of this week's episode. Number 1, negative self-talk is your mind's way of trying to protect you, but it can get out of control if you let it run riot. Number 2, you choose how you think and feel. So if that inner monologue sounds like it's out to get you, take control, either on your own or with help. And number 3, increase your positive self-talk through conscious daily effort. Focus on the positive in all things, reframe the negative, and learn to let go. As always, I'm going to close out with a quote that I'd like to encourage you to reflect upon. This quote is by Robert Kiyosaki, and it ties into this week's topic of self-talk. The quote is, "It's not what we say out loud that really determines our lives. It's what we whisper to ourselves that has the most power." Let me repeat that. It's not what we say out loud that really determines our lives. It's what we whisper to ourselves that has the most power. Alright, and that brings us to the end of this week's episode. To summarize, we all have that little voice inside our head that tells us we're doing well or where we need to do better. But when that voice becomes overly critical and belligerent, you need to remember that you don't have to put up with that crap. Take control and stop giving that voice power. Good mental health takes daily effort, and if you've had difficulties with negative self-talk in the past, then know that it is absolutely possible to turn it around with continued practice and taking it one day at a time. And that's the end of this week's episode. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope that you got some useful advice. Next week, I'll be talking about fear, what it is, why it matters, and how to work through your fears in order to improve and maintain good mental health and well-being. I hope you'll join me again for that episode. Until then, stay in touch on social media. I post extra content throughout the week online, and you can find Let's Talk About Mental Health on Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook at LTAMH Official. That's LTAMH Official. Also, you can go to the website to find extra content, listen to past episodes, and read the written version of every episode, along with the Mental Health Talk newsletter that I send out every Friday, which is full of hints and tips for making the most of your mental health and well-being. Head over to letstalkaboutmentalhealth.com.au. Before I go, if you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to leave a review on your preferred podcast platform, because reviews are really important. They help other people to find the show. And if you're feeling really generous, please give Let's Talk About Mental Health a follow on Instagram and tell your friends about it. Thank you. Until next time, look after yourself and make a conscious decision to put positivity and kindness out into the world, because what you put out comes back to you. Thanks again, and talk to you next time.